All right, so for this deep dive, I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Picture something with me.
Okay, I'm with you.
We're in upstate New York, and I don't mean, the Hudson Valley with all the cute bed and breakfasts.
No, we're talking way upstate, near the Canadian border almost.
Exactly, and we're talking 1930s. The Great Depression is just grinding everything to a halt. We're in a town called Peru.
Not the country, the town.
Right, the town. It's right on the edge of the Adirondacks, super close to Lake Champlain. It's rugged, it's rural.
And it is completely disconnected from what we would think of as the modern world.
Totally. So on this farm, there's no electricity, no indoor plumbing, no running water.
It's a life that's dictated by the sun and the seasons, not by, a train schedule or a clock on the wall.
It's all hard work and harsh winters. And there's a one-room schoolhouse about a mile's walk down a dirt road.
And on this farm lives a young girl. She's the oldest of 6 kids.
Yeah, and she's doing the farm work. She's milking cows. She's helping with the harvest. If you saw her back then, you would think you were looking at a character straight out of Little House on the Prairie.
You definitely wouldn't look at her and think, there goes the architect of all modern computing.
Right. It's just, it feels like a complete category error. And yet, that girl, Fran Allen, goes from that farm to becoming the very first woman to win the A.M. Turing Award.
The Nobel Prize of Computing. It's the highest honor there is in the field.
She didn't just, participate in the digital revolution. She fundamentally wrote the grammar for how we talk to machines efficiently.
It's one of the most, I think, unlikely trajectories in the entire history of science.
That really is.
And what I love about her story is that it wasn't a straight line. It wasn't, child prodigy builds a radio in the garage, goes to MIT, changes the world.
Wow.
No, it was messy. It was. It was driven by accident, by necessity, and, to be honest, by a little bit of desperation.
That's the part that gets me. The desperation. She didn't show up at IBM on day one planning to invent the future or save the world.
Not at all.
She joined because she had bills to pay. She had student loans.
The great universal motivator. Student debt has probably driven more innovation than we give it credit for.
It's so true. So our mission for this deep dive is to trace that journey. We are going to walk from that farm in Peru through the high-security computer labs of the NSA and finally land on the algorithms that probably help run the software we are using to record this right now.
We are talking about Fran Allen, the woman who taught computers how to be efficient.
And to really get why she is so important, we have to understand what that word efficiency even meant in the world she was working in.
Oh, absolutely. Because today, efficiency means, your phone battery lasts an extra hour?
Right.
Back then, it meant something completely different. It was the difference between something being possible and impossible.
So let's set the stage. We need to do a little time travel. It's 1957.
Eisenhower's president.
Sputnik is about to launch and scare the absolute daylights out of America. And Fran Allen has just walked through the doors of IBM Research in Poughkeepsie, New York. What's the vibe in that building?
The vibe is, well, it's distinct. You have to remember, computer science as a major, as a degree, it didn't exist. There were no CS departments at universities.
Oh, who were these people? Who was working there?
They were mathematicians, physicists, a few electrical engineers, maybe some logicians. They were people from other fields who were drawn to these new machines.
And the machines themselves, they weren't sitting on desks.
No, the machines were the desks, or really they were the entire room.
These giant humming beasts.
Full of vacuum tubes, cooled by massive air conditioning units just to keep them from literally melting down. And the culture around them was very much like a priesthood.
A priesthood, I like that.
Yeah. You had the hardware guys who actually built the machine, and then you had the researchers who were trying to figure out how to talk to it.
And talking to it was a total nightmare. Right?
It was excruciating. In 1957, if you wanted the computer to do something simple like add 2 numbers, you had to speak its native language.
Assembly code.
Assembly code. You had to tell it, go to this exact memory address, move the data from there into this specific register. Now go to this other address, get that data, add it to the first register, and then put the result in this third location.
It's just one tiny step above writing in raw zeros and ones.
Barely. It's cryptic, it's incredibly tedious, and if you make a single typo, the whole program just crashes. No error message, just stops.
But, and I guess this is the important part, it gave you absolute control.
Total control. And the programmers of that era, let's call them the assembly cult.
Wizards.
The wizards, yeah. They prided themselves on their ability to squeeze every single ounce of performance out of that hardware. They knew exactly how many milliseconds each instruction took. They were true artisans.
And right into the middle of this world of wizards, a new thing appears. Fortran.
Right. Fortran, the first high-level programming language, had only been announced maybe 2 months before Fran Allen even started at IBM.
And the idea was completely radical for the time.
Totally. Instead of writing all that cryptic assembly code, you could just write something that looks like a math equation. You could write C equals A plus B.
And then a special program, a compiler, would do the hard work of translating that into the machine code for you.
That was the promise.
That sounds amazing. Infinitely better. Why would anyone possibly object to that?
Because the wizards didn't trust the translator, they looked at Fortran and the idea of a compiler and they said, there is no way a machine can write code that is as good as the code I can write by hand.
They thought it would be messy.
They believed it would produce what they called spaghetti code. Bloated, slow, inefficient instructions that wasted the machine's precious time.
I get it. It's like a master chef watching someone use a microwave.
That's a great analogy.
They're thinking, sure, it's faster, but the result is going to be garbage.
Exactly. And in 1957, garbage code wasn't just, an aesthetic problem. It was incredibly expensive. Computer time was rented out for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars an hour. Memory was measured in kilobytes.
So every wasted instruction, every wasted byte of memory was literally burning money.
It was burning real money. So the skepticism from the establishment was immense. And that is the world that Fran Allen walks into.
So let's back up just a little bit. How does she even get there? We said she was a teacher.
She was very much on the education track. She graduated from the New York State College for Teachers, which is now SUNY Albany, back in 1954.
And she goes right back to her hometown.
Right back to Peru, New York. Stood in front of a classroom teaching algebra and trigonometry to high schoolers.
I could just picture her, chalk dust on her hands, trying to convince a bunch of teenagers to care about cosines.
And by all accounts, she loved it. She was good at it. She actually wanted that to be her career. But the state of New York had a requirement.
Ah, bureaucracy.
Always. To get your permanent teaching certificate, you had to have a master's degree.
The old credential treadmill.
It gets us all. So she enrolls at the University of Michigan, gets her master's in mathematics in 1957. But now she has a new problem.
Money.
She's been in grad school for a couple of years, not earning anything, and she's taken out student loans. She's in debt.
Deep in the red.
And that's when IBM recruiters show up on campus. They're hiring pretty much anyone with a strong math background. The pay is really good.
So she makes a practical decision.
A purely practical one. She thinks, okay, I'll go work for this company in Poughkeepsie for, I don't know, a year, maybe 2. I'll pay off this debt, and then I'm right back to the chalkboard in Peru.
And that 2-year plan ends up becoming a 45-year career.
It's the classic accidental career. But this is where her background as a teacher becomes her superpower. IBM hires her. She knows absolutely nothing about computers.
So what do they have her do?
Naturally, they assign her to teach the new employees how to use Fortran.
Wait, hold on. They assign the person who doesn't know the new language to teach the new language.
That feels very corporate, doesn't it?
It really does.
But you have to remember, it was the Wild West back then. They probably thought, well, she has a teaching degree. She's a teacher. Great.
Okay, but think about the position that puts her in. She has to stand up in front of a room full of incredibly smart people, these mathematicians and physicists, and explain this brand new, highly controversial tool.
And she can't bluff. She has to actually know her stuff.
So she has to learn it and learn it fast.
Faster than fast. She described it as learning the concepts days, sometimes just hours, before she had to give the lecture.
But how? There were no textbooks yet. Fortran was too new. Where does she go for information?
This is the pivotal moment. This is the act that defines her entire intellectual legacy. With no manual and no grammar book, she went to the only source of truth that existed.
What was that?
She got her hands on the source code of the Fortran compiler itself.
Whoa. Okay, unpack what that means. What does that physically look like in 1957?
It would have been stacks and stacks of paper, huge printouts of assembly code. She was reading the raw instructions that the creators of Fortran, John Backus and his team, had written to build the translator.
So it's like trying to understand how a car works. Not by reading the owner's manual, but by taking the entire engine apart piece by piece.
That is a perfect analogy, and it is incredibly difficult. Reading someone else's code is hard today with all our modern tools. Reading uncommented assembly code from 1957 must have been like trying to decipher ancient hieroglyphics.
But doing that must have given her an insight that almost no one else had.
A profound insight. Most people were just looking at the surface of Fortran, the syntax, the commands. Fran Allen was looking underneath it.
She was seeing the machinery.
She saw the machinery. She saw how the compiler took a simple command like C plus B and twisted and turned it into machine logic. She saw the places where it was inefficient. She saw the brilliant little shortcuts the original programmers had used. She saw all the messy parts.
She saw the matrix?
She really did. And in that process, she realized something fundamental. The compiler wasn't just a simple translator. It was a bridge between the human world and the machine world.
And if you could make that bridge better.
If you could optimize how that translation happened, you could make the hardware do things its own designers never even dreamed of. You could unlock its true potential.
That moment, reading the source code, that's the spark. That's where the math teacher truly becomes the computer scientist.
Absolutely. She wasn't just conveying information anymore. She was analyzing the very structure of information itself, and she got good at it. Really, really good.
Which is why I'm guessing she didn't stay in that teaching role for very long.
No. Pretty quickly, IBM realized what they had, and they pulled her off the teaching gig and threw her into something much, much darker.
The spy games.
The spy games.
So we've jumped forward a little bit. It's 1959. The Cold War is, well, it's freezing.
The tension with the Soviet Union is at an all-time high.
And the U.S. government needs a serious technological edge. Enter a new project, Project Harvest.
Harvest. It sounds so pastoral and friendly, doesn't it? Like she's going back to her roots on the farm.
I have a feeling they weren't counting bushels of wheat with this one.
No. The client for Project Harvest was the National Security Agency, the NSA.
And the goal?
The goal was cryptanalysis, code breaking. The NSA was intercepting huge volumes of Soviet communications, and they needed to decrypt them as close to real time as possible.
Real time in 1959.
Yeah.
With that technology.
That was the dream, or as close as they could get. The amount of data they were dealing with was massive, far beyond what any existing computer could handle. They needed a new machine.
So IBM is building the hardware.
IBM was building a supercomputer called Stretch, which was already a huge leap forward. But for the NSA, they built a highly specialized, customized version of Stretch, and that was called Harvest.
What made Harvest so special?
It was a monster. It had unique, specialized hardware designed specifically for streaming massive amounts of data and looking for patterns. It was essentially built to scan for keywords and recurring sequences in encrypted text at incredible speeds.
But a powerful piece of hardware is just an expensive paperweight if you don't have the software to control it.
Exactly. And that's where Fran comes in. They needed a new programming language that could harness the power of this unique machine.
The language was called Alpha, right?
That's right. And Allen was assigned to help design Alpha. But, and this is the crucial part, she was also put in charge of managing the compiler optimization team for the entire project.
Okay, so this is where the stakes for optimization get a lot higher.
Oh, they go through the roof.
Yeah.
It's no longer about saving IBM a few $100s in computer time.
No. Now, if your compiler generates inefficient code, it means the intelligence report comes in 3 days too late and you miss a potential missile launch.
Precisely. Speed was the only metric that mattered. Fran Allen was leading a team that had to ensure the software they wrote didn't waste a single clock cycle of that powerful, one-of-a-kind hardware.
She's sitting right at the intersection of top-secret government intelligence and the absolute bleeding edge of technology.
And this was all happening behind a wall of secrecy. Most of the team members didn't even know the full scope of what they were working on until details started leaking to the press years later.
I have to pause on this for a second. She's a woman in 1959 leading one of the most critical software teams for a national security project.
It's remarkable.
We talk a lot about the women of hidden figures at NASA who were the computers. But here's Fran Allen, not just doing the math, but designing the entire compiler architecture for the NSA. Was she the only woman on that team?
In those high-level architectural meetings, often yes. She wasn't the only woman at IBM Research, and we'll get into that, but in her specific role at that level of leadership, she was a pioneer.
And the system they built, Harvest, it was used until 1976.
A 17-year run. That is an eternity in the world of computing. That's a testament to how well they designed it.
So she's cut her teeth on Fortran. She's been battle-tested by the NSA. Now we get to the core of her legacy, the optimizing compiler.
This is the deep dive.
We've used that phrase a few times, but I really want to break it down because I feel like optimization is a word we all throw around very loosely. I need to optimize my morning routine.
Right, or I've optimized my sandwich making process.
Exactly. But in computer science, this has a very specific, rigorous mathematical meaning.
It does, and to understand it, we have to go back to that skepticism from the assembly cult.
The wizards.
The wizards. Remember, they truly believed that a machine could never write code as efficient as a human could. Fran set out to prove that not only could a machine do it, but that a machine could actually do it better than a human.
Because a machine can analyze patterns at a scale that a human brain just can't.
Precisely. And for this work, she teamed up with another giant of computing, John Cocke.
He's a fascinating figure in his own right.
Oh, a brilliant, eccentric character. He and Fran became this dynamic duo at IBM's Thomas J. Watson Research Center. Starting in the mid-1960s, they began publishing a series of papers that essentially invented the entire science of compiler optimization.
Okay, so let's get into the how. How do you teach a computer to look at code and make it faster? Let's walk through some of the big techniques they cataloged. The first one I saw mentioned was procedure inlining. What is that?
Okay, let's use an office analogy for this. Imagine you're a manager. You're the main program.
Got it.
And part of your job involves signing a document. But the signed document procedure is handled by your assistant who works in an office down the hall.
Okay, so the standard non-optimized way to do this is I get a document, I have to get up from my desk, walk down the hall, hand it to my assistant, wait for them to sign it, take it back, and walk back to my desk.
Right, and all of that walking back and forth, that's overhead.
Right.
In a computer, the processor has to jump to a different part of memory to find a subroutine and then jump back. That takes time. It might save memory space because you only write the signing instructions once, but it costs you in execution time.
So what is procedure inlining then?
Procedure inlining is when the compiler looks at this situation and says, you know what? This trip down the hall is happening a lot and it's slowing things down. I'm going to teach the manager how to sign the document themselves.
So it just copies the instructions.
It takes the instructions from the assistant's office and essentially copy-pastes them directly into the manager's workflow. Now, when the task comes up, the manager just does it right there at their desk. No walking, no overhead.
Boom. Instantly faster.
Much faster. But there's a trade-off, and this is key. Now the manager's instruction book is bigger. The final program takes up more memory because you've duplicated those instructions.
And memory was super expensive back then.
Incredibly expensive. So Alan's work was about creating the rules. She turned that trade-off into a mathematical formula the computer could use to decide. When is it worth it? When is the speed gain from inlining more valuable than the memory cost?
That makes total sense. Okay, let's do another one. Loop unrolling. This one just sounds like a yoga pose or something.
It's definitely less relaxing than yoga. So computers love loops. Do this specific task 1,000 times. That's what they're best at.
Right.
Let's stick with the office. Imagine you're an intern and your job is to stamp 100 envelopes. A standard computer loop would look like this. 1, pick up an envelope. 2, stamp it. 3, put it down. 4, ask yourself, am I done with all 100 envelopes yet? 4, ask yourself. 5, if the answer is no, go back to step 1.
Okay, that seems straightforward.
But look at step 4. You are asking yourself that question, am I done yet? 100 separate times. Each time you ask, it's a little mental stutter. It interrupts the flow of the work.
And in a computer, that question isn't free. That check takes processing power.
Exactly. That conditional check and the jump back to the beginning of the loop consume CPU cycles. Loop unrolling is when the compiler looks at that and says, hey, I know for a fact you have to do at least, say, 4 of these. So here's a new, better plan.
It batches the work.
It batches the work. The new instructions are 1, stamp an envelope. 2, stamp an envelope. 3, stamp an envelope. 4, stamp an envelope. 5. Now ask yourself, am I done with the whole stack yet?
So you've just cut the number of times you have to ask that question by 75%.
Precisely. You reduce the loop overhead. You spend more of the computer's time doing the actual work stamping and less time managing the work. It sounds almost trivial to us with our super fast computers today.
But back then,
on a processor from the 1960s, eliminating all those jump and compare instructions could speed up a critical part of a program by 20, 30, even 40%. That's a massive gain.
it's the difference between buying in bulk at a big box store versus running to the corner store for one item every single day.
That's a perfect analogy. And then there's one called code motion, which is my personal favorite because it really highlights how ridiculously literal and frankly dumb a computer can be if you don't help it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me about code motion.
All right, new analogy. Imagine you are painting a large fence and you're working your way down the panels inside a loop. Your instructions are 1. Dip your brush in the paint can. 2. Paint one fence panel. 3. Open the gate so the dog can go out. 4. Go back to step 1 for the next panel.
Wait, but the gate is already open after the first time. Why would I keep opening it for every single panel?
Because the instruction is inside the loop. A naive computer just follows its orders blindly. It gets to step 3 and thinks, my instruction is open the gate. I will now perform the open gate action. It has no idea that the state of the gate hasn't changed. It just does what it's told over and over.
That is just maddeningly inefficient.
It is. So code motion is the compiler being smart enough to analyze that loop and say, hey, wait a second. The action open the gate has nothing to do with which fence panel we're currently painting. It's an invariant. It doesn't change inside the loop.
So you just move it.
You move it. The compiler rewrites the program to be 1. Open the gate once. 2. Now start the loop. Dip brush, paint panel, repeat.
It's so simple and logical when you explain it, but someone had to figure out how to teach a machine to see that logic automatically.
And that was the genius of their work. In 1971, Fran and John Koch published a paper called A Catalog of Optimizing Transformations. It was basically the Bible for all of this.
The definitive guide.
It took what had always been an art form, this wizard-like intuition of, oh, I think I can tweak this little bit of assembly code here, and they turned it into a rigorous, repeatable science that could be fully automated.
They proved the wizards wrong.
They proved that a well-designed compiler could analyze the whole program and generate machine code that was not just as good as, but often much, much better than what the average human programmer could write.
Because the compiler never gets tired. It never gets lazy and forgets to move the gate instruction.
And it can see the whole picture at once. It has a global view of the entire program, which was another one of Alan's huge contributions, the idea of data flow analysis.
Which is what exactly?
It's about systematically tracking how every piece of data moves through the entire program. Where is a variable created? Where is it used? Where is it changed? By mapping this out, the compiler can make incredibly smart decisions that a human looking at only one function at a time would miss.
So she's basically conquered the single processor. She's written the Bible of optimization. But technology never stands still.
Never.
We get into the 1980s and the hardware starts to change in a fundamental way.
Right.
We stop trying to make one single brain faster and bigger, and we start trying to use many brains at once.
The shift to parallel computing. And this is where the problems get an order of magnitude more difficult.
Why is that? I mean, intuitively, 2 heads are better than 1, right? 4 processors should be 4 times as fast.
In life, yes. In computing, it's a logistical nightmare. For its entire history up until the 80s, programming was sequential. It was a story. You do step 1, then you do step 2, then step 3. It's a single, predictable timeline.
The straight line.
A straight line. Parallel computing shatters that timeline. Now you have, say, 4 processors. You want to give each of them a piece of the work to do at the same time. But what happens if processor A needs the result of a calculation that processor B is still working on?
You get a traffic jam. The whole thing has to stop and wait.
Or worse, you get something called a race condition, where the final result depends on which processor gets there first. Or a deadlock, where processor A is waiting for B and B is waiting for A, and the entire system just freezes forever.
So writing parallel code by hand is just brain-breakingly difficult.
It is, because the human brain is really, really bad at keeping track of 4 or 8 or 1,000 simultaneous timelines.
So what was Fran's solution? What was her approach to this new challenge?
Well, her answer was the same as before: automation. She believed the programmer shouldn't have to deal with this complexity. The compiler should.
Let the machine manage the mess.
Exactly. She led a massive project at IBM called PTRAN, which stood for Parallel Translator. And the goal was unbelievably audacious for the time.
What was it?
The goal was to take a normal sequential program written by a regular human who thinks in a straight line and have the PTRAN compiler automatically figure out how to break it apart and run it safely and efficiently on a parallel machine.
She wanted the software to become the world's best project manager.
That's a great way to put it. And to do this, her team had to invent a new way of looking at programs. They created a concept called the program dependence graph.
Okay, that sounds important. Walk us through it.
Think of a complex recipe for making dinner. A normal sequential recipe looks like a list. 1. chop onions. 2, heat pan on stove. 3, saute onions in the pan. 4, toss the salad. 5, bake the chicken.
Right. A sequential cook does step 1, then 2, then 3, and so on.
The program dependence graph isn't a list, it's a mat. It draws lines between the tasks based on what depends on what.
So saute onions depends on chop onions. You can't do it without the chopped onions.
Exactly. And saute onions also depends on heat pan. You need the hot pan, there are dependencies, but what about toss the salad?
That's an island. It doesn't depend on the onions or the pan or the chicken. It's totally independent.
Precisely. And bake the chicken is also mostly independent, at least at the beginning. The compiler builds this dependency map, and then it can see the opportunities for parallelism.
It can see that you can have one processor chopping onions while another processor is tossing the salad at the exact same time.
It untangles the spaghetti before it even gets cooked. It can assign independent tasks to different processors. This concept, the program dependence graph, is still the primary structuring method used by most parallelizing compilers today. It was a monumental breakthrough.
She was basically building the air traffic control system for the information superhighway.
That's a very 90s metaphor, but you know what? It actually fits perfectly.
I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
So we've established this titan of technical achievement, a true giant. But we can't tell her full story without talking about the environment she did all this in. IBM. The tech world. It was a boys' club.
It absolutely was. But here's a statistic that's going to blow your mind. In the 1970s and 80s, in the compiler research group that Fran Allen managed at IBM, do you want to take a guess at the gender breakdown?
Oh, man. Based on everything I know about that era, I'm going to guess it was like 95% men, maybe 1 or 2 other women.
It was nearly 50% women.
Get out of here. 50% in the 1970s.
50%, 1-to-1.
That's better than most Silicon Valley companies are today in 2026. How on earth did that happen?
It happened because Fran Allen made it happen. She didn't just sit back and accept the pipeline problem as an excuse. She actively sought out, recruited, and mentored women. She created an environment where they could not just survive, but thrive.
She built the culture.
She built the culture. A colleague of hers, Barbara Simons, who later became president of the ACM, called Fran a strong feminist who understood that mentorship wasn't just about being nice, it was about strategic advocacy.
It's about holding the door open for the people coming behind you.
And she did that explicitly. There's a great story. She took a sabbatical to teach at Stanford in 1977. And in one of her graduate classes was a student named Anita Borg.
Anita Borg, as in the founder of the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, the AnitaB.org Institute. That Anita Borg.
The very same, a legendary figure in her own right. And Anita Borg later said that during her entire PhD program at a major university, Fran Allen was the only female professor she ever had.
The only one. Wow.
Imagine the impact of that. You're sitting in a classroom, probably surrounded by men, maybe feeling like an imposter, questioning if you even belong there. And you look up at the podium, and the person teaching you is the world's foremost expert on compiler optimization. And she looks like you.
It just changes your whole perception of what's possible. It moves the goalpost from impossible to that could be me.
It's everything. And IBM did eventually recognize her leadership. She became the first female IBM fellow in 1989.
Which is a huge deal at IBM.
It's their highest technical honor. It's reserved for a tiny fraction of their most brilliant researchers. She was also president of the IBM Academy of Technology. And they later created mentorship awards in her name.
But the biggest award, the one that cemented her place in the pantheon, came much later.
A Turing Award.
The Nobel of Computing. It's 2006. Fran has been retired from IBM for a few years, and the Association for Computing Machinery makes the announcement.
She becomes the first woman in the award's 40-year history to receive it.
It took 40 years.
40 years. It's a pretty sobering statistic when you think about it, and frankly, many people felt it was long overdue.
Especially when you consider that her collaborator, John Koch, had won the same award.
In 1987.
Wait a minute. They did the foundational work together. The seminal papers were credited to Allen and Koch.
Mm.
And he won the award 19 years before she did.
19 years earlier, yes.
That stings. That really says something.
It does. It reflects the biases of the era. It reflects who was often seen as the lead genius and who was perhaps perceived as the helper or the implementer, even when that wasn't the case.
But to her credit, she seems to have handled it with incredible grace.
She never expressed any public bitterness about it. When she finally won, she used her acceptance speech and the platform it gave her to talk about. Well, You can guess.
More opportunities for women in science?
Exactly. She said she hoped the award would create more opportunities for women in science, computing, and engineering. She stayed on message, always.
So before we wrap this all up, I want to pivot to a part of her life that seems completely disconnected from computers.
Right.
We've painted this picture of her as this intense lab researcher, staring at code, living in this abstract world of logic. But her weekends were different.
Oh, she was not staring at a screen on the weekend. She was staring at glaciers and rock faces. Fran Allen was a serious, hardcore mountain climber.
And we're not talking about, casual day hikes in the local hills.
Yeah. No. We're talking about expeditions to the high Arctic. She was an active member of the American Alpine Club. She was part of an expedition to Ellesmere Island.
Ellesmere Island, for people who don't know, that is the most northern part of Canada. It is way up there. That is polar bear country.
It is one of the most desolate, remote, and dangerous places on the planet. And she was on a team that established a completely new route across a section of the island.
That's incredible. And I feel like there's a perfect metaphor in there for her work.
I think so, too. How do you see it?
Well, think about what a technical climb is. You're standing at the bottom of a mountain, looking up at this chaotic, dangerous, seemingly impassable landscape. A rock face, a glacier field.
And your job is to find a path through it. Not just any path, but the optimal path. The one that conserves the most energy. The one that avoids the biggest dangers. The most efficient route to the top.
It's optimization. It's the exact same problem.
It's exactly the same problem. Whether she was looking at a messy loop of Fortran code or a field of glacial crevasses, her mind was doing the same thing. She was identifying dependencies, finding invariants, and charting the most efficient path. She was bringing order to chaos.
The great explorer of complex systems, both digital and natural. That's beautiful.
She kept exploring right up until the end. She passed away in 2020 on her 88th birthday. And the outpouring of respect from the entire computing community was universal. The IE, a huge professional organization, created the Frances E. Allen Medal in her honor.
And it's only the second medal in their history to be named after a woman.
The other one being the Ada Lovelace Award. She's in very good company.
So let's bring it all home. We've gone from the farm to the source code, from the spies to the parallel algorithms. What's the big takeaway? Why should you, listening to this right now, care about Fran Allen?
You should care because the modern world you're living in is built on the foundation of her work. Every single time you open an app on your phone and it loads instantly instead of taking 10 seconds. You can thank the principles of optimization she developed.
Every time you check a weather forecast and a supercomputer model running on thousands of processors has predicted the rain.
That's the legacy of her work in parallel computing. She is the invisible architect. She's the reason our digital world is fast and responsive.
She made computing viable. She proved that we, as humans, didn't need to contort our brains to speak the machine's language. We could instead teach the machine to understand ours and to do it efficiently.
She democratized high-performance computing. She made it possible for people who weren't assembly code wizards to write software that could solve huge problems.
And on a more philosophical level, she reminds us of the profound value of looking under the hood.
That is the single biggest lesson from her life. She was handed a tool, Fortran, and she wasn't content to just use it. She had to open it up. She had to read the source.
And that leads me to one last slightly provocative thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
We are living in a moment right now that feels a lot like 1957 all over again. We have a powerful new tool that a lot of people are skeptical of, AI. Specifically, AI that can write code. GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT.
It's the ultimate compiler in a way.
Yeah.
It translates plain English human intent directly into functional code.
Exactly. Fran Allen spent her entire career teaching computers how to optimize code that humans wrote. Now the computers are starting to create the code from scratch. In a way, it's the ultimate fulfillment of her vision. The machine is doing all the heavy lifting.
It is.
And here's the question. Fran Allen became a genius precisely because she was forced to get her hands dirty. She had to read the raw assembly. She had to understand the nuts and bolts at the deepest possible level.
Right.
If the AI does all of that for us, if the car drives itself perfectly every time, do we lose something critical? Are we raising a new generation of programmers who will never know how to read the source?
That is the fundamental risk. Convenience can sometimes be the enemy of deep understanding. If we stop looking under the hood because the engine appears to never break down, we might completely forget how the engine works.
And when it finally does break, in some new and unexpected way,
we might not have a Fran Allen around who knows how to fix it.
A little bit of existential dread to end our deep
It's
dive.
just a little to keep you sharp.
That's it for this one. Go read some source code,
Mhm.
or maybe climb a mountain, or both. Thanks for listening.
Take care.